What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is episode number 13 of Changemakers. Starting a little later this evening, we'll be getting a schedule together soon enough. We're figuring things out with Primetime Patriots and us and Cash. We'll get it all figured out so we have an exact, perfect weekly schedule. But for now, guess what? We are starting with Changemakers in just about 1 minute. We've got a great guest today. We're going to be talking about something a little different than we typically talk about. This one's going to be finding a way to take your emotions and move forward, be inspired with creative expression, and find a way to emotionally heal. So it's a healing episode. It's also a way of creating change in yourself so that you're better suited to make change in the world around you. I am very excited about this show. If you've seen some of the posting that we have done with podcasts that I've been on, I have been on her podcast on The Love Story, and it was probably one of my most fun podcasts. And actually, from a viewer response, you guys enjoyed that one as well. So this one, I want you guys to share this episode out. Don't be worried about politics and all that stuff and people thinking that you're too much of one thing and not another. This one is a show that you can share to all of your friends. Please hit the like button right when you come over, right when you start watching. Like, share, love it, all the good things. And we'll get started in about 20 seconds with episode number 13 of Changemakers. Going to give you guys a few more seconds to come on over. We are growing an audience. Fantastic. So thank you guys. And again, keep sharing, keep liking. The more likes, the more comments you do, the more people see it. Hello, Rhonda. Hello, Brittany. And I'm looking forward to as well, Brittany. I am excited. And after this, you guys know what happens on YouTube at 9 o'clock tonight. We'll talk about that later in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and cue the music. It's time to start Changemakers, episode number 13. We only have 8 million things that I play before a show starts. Thank you guys for your patience. I'm incredibly excited for this episode. I think you guys are going to enjoy it as well. I'm going to get some housekeeping out of the way before we get started. As a lot of you guys know, tonight we've got a different show coming up. I'm not going to say it out loud because I don't want it to scare people on the interwebs and cause them to not allow people to see the show. So coming up later, you must follow us on our YouTube page. For this show, you guys know that's coming. It is comedy. It is fun. It is a safe place for people of different, political values. And that we'll leave it at that. So just make sure you follow us in general. That would help us out a ton. YouTube.com/C/B the Change USA. Episode number 2 of that show coming up later tonight. So make sure you are following us there. Also, we have got our store. We'll be having the Cyber Monday sale. It's now extended over 2 weeks. So if you just go to the website that we have for our clothing, it is #BeTheChange. Where is it? If you'd like to go, it's #BeTheChange.com and click on shop at the top of the page and do Cyber Monday. Cyber Monday is the coupon code that gives you 20% off already discounted merchandise. We're trying to get rid of everything in the store so we can start fresh. We do have some new stuff, hopefully coming in soon. So yeah, that's the deal on that. Anything else fun? Yeah, this is one of the shows on our podcast. So if you don't catch this is a great 40-minute commute to work and enjoy the podcast that we've had with this and Truth Will Set You Free. So I think I've covered just about everything. Patreon is on the bottom. I know that I've been saying that we're going to do a sales type show where I give away a bunch of stuff at the same price as shipping, and that will be coming up soon. But we've got a lot of shows that we are trying to make sure we're figuring out proper timing now as we're corroborating a little bit with Primetime Patriots, Cash's Lives, and all of the Be the Change stuff. So thank you guys so much for your support. As always, Patreon's down there. I'm going to say hello to everybody. We got Cricket, Cheryl, Audra, thank you. Oh, I saw you got a hoodie yesterday. So thank you for that. Sherry, good to see you. Sherry, different Sherry, spelled slightly different. Mary Sue, hello. And I love Nikki. Nikki is saying, hello, everyone. Looking forward to this show. Indiana here. That's best assistant in the business, ladies and gentlemen. Makes it look like I typed it myself. Love it. Yes, it is Cyber Monday, all one word. Brittany, just like that. All right, let's go ahead and get the show started. I'm going to introduce our guest. We're going to have a little chatter. We're welcoming questions. Please share this out. Hit the like, hit the hearts, everything that you guys can do. We thank you for it. This is fun. This is going to be a really good show. So our guest is the founder and CEO of The Love Story. It's a nonprofit media educational and production company. The mission is to inspire the brokenhearted to transform pain into creative expression through expressive writing. Artist-inspired Mingjie, damn it. She's laughing in the background at least. Mingjie is a former educator with a master's in secondary education, now a journal artist and entrepreneur. She has published 3 books, produced 3 interactive augmented reality diaries, and is creating a new genre called journal artism. And I'm very excited to talk to her. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mingjie Zhai.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Thank you so much, Anthony, for bringing me here. I'm so excited to be here.
I knew I was going to struggle with the name. I knew it. I was in my head. It's
okay. Just remember Mingjie the dog? Do you remember that? Like
Benji. Yeah.
Yeah, Mingjie, the little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The G, I see it and I'm like, what do I do with the G? It's there for a reason, but it's really not. It's like
OG.
Yeah, OG. So, Mingjie, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your background, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a former educator, and I went through my dark night of soul 9 years ago after a divorce, and that sent me spiraling down to a depression. At the time, I was at my pinnacle of my career as an educator, but I didn't know how to cope with the pain of grief and loss. And long story short, I went down a mental health rabbit hole in Mental Health America. Like, I was given the pill, but it made me more dependent. I was given therapy, but I felt like I was talking to like my own, like an echo of my own self. And I wound up at a mental hospital, and that made me more crazy. And the pills actually made me more dependent into the system, because it was all kind of like, anyway, and I was like, no, this is not for me. And I did what I love doing, which is to travel. I sold my home, and that helped me fund my travels for a year. And during that year, I started to interview different people about heartbreak. And that was the beginning of a project idea I had. And when I came back to LA, I started asking around and started interviewing artists about their heartbreak. And that was 6 years ago. But over time, it's evolved. It's evolved from a publication to a DIY journaling portal to now a journaling portal and a journaling program that is hand in hand with the media. So I'm fusing media with the ability to journal deeper. And I was a former English teacher, curriculum designer. And so for me, it was just a natural, like, I did my optimal creative expression, which is I'm good at writing. I enjoy interviewing people. And the interviewing actually healed. It was cathartic for me, because it was like that face-to-face, which is such a luxury now in COVID times. But
yeah,
back then, you know, the face-to-face where you get to meet the artist, especially if I got to meet Cry Wolf, Justin Taylor Phillips. And I remember I loved his music a year prior to actually meeting him face-to-face. So that for me was like the climax of interviewing, because I was such a fan of his music. So what I want to do is I want to bring that kind of program to high school and college communities to be able to interview their favorite artists about, you know, just how to break their hearts open, their pain and passion testimonies, how they got through pain, how they got through depression, anxiety, any of the isms out there. And I found out that, so I was diagnosed with bipolar. I found out through the interview that Cry Wolf was also diagnosed with bipolar. And that for me was like a miracle moment. I was like, oh my God, you being, you know, such a talented individual, and, you know, you really like optimized your bipolarness by just focusing on the creative expression piece of it. So I wouldn't say that I created the love story. I would say I co-created with so many artists. And over here on the other side of my wall, as you can see, these are the artists that we've interviewed over time. Some you might recognize. Nako Bear is up there.
Where's my picture?
Yours is coming up. Over there, like, no. You're probably going to be in volume 4. Iterating. Yeah. And like Moby, we've interviewed Moby way back when. And so, you know, just all these artist responses kept giving me more and more ideas on how to be of service ultimately to the person that was essentially myself 9 years ago, the one that felt like they were alone, like there was something legitimately wrong with them for constantly feeling sad. But really, when you love someone so deeply and you lose that individual, you know, that void it's going to take almost a lifetime to grieve, you know?
Yeah.
And so the initial impact of grief is feeling as if the world kept spinning and you got stuck, like you're frozen in time. Yeah. And so I think
were you describing grief or 2020?
Both. Yeah, right. So yeah, what we want to do is we want to recreate some of the things that worked for me, which was a 12-step program, adult anonymous support groups, but without the focus on the substance abuse or addiction. We want to keep the same kind of agape love community, kindred connection, and translate it into creative writing, expressive journaling. And our first target market is the college communities, because I found out that college students, like the second leading cause of death is suicide. And now even with COVID, you know, like everyone's so isolated, like even worse.
Yeah.
So what we really want to do is like create that level of like, you know, they say in AA, all you need to create an AA meeting is a resentment and a coffee pot or something. So, you know, we're thinking like, well, how can we make this super easy to create journaling circles as journal artists to come together? Yeah. You know, where two or more gather, you know, the Holy Spirit, the spirit of higher power comes through. So it's like people holding space for each other. We really want to make that happen. And to be surrounded by voices, like different voices of love, loss, and transformation, you know, that whole cycle.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I want to stop you real quick. So first off, everybody that's just joining us now, I know Cass shared, so thank you guys for coming over. As you guys know with Changemakers, the purpose of Changemakers is finding people that are creating change in the world around them. This show is about positivity. This show is about setting an example of how to change and going through different things in your own life, the cathartic side of pain and agony, and then finding a way to then change people in your circle and then change the world. And it's the ripple effect mentality. And that's what this show is about. So thank you guys for hopping on and joining us. Please hit the like button, hit the share button. And Mingjie is going to tell more about what she's doing and kind of the philosophy behind it. Please feel free to ask any questions as we go. The great thing about her message, and especially for our audience, and I think this is also interesting, that whole like phrase, like holding space or transformation, used to be this like new agey view on the world, and it just isn't anymore. We've realized that no matter what your religion is, no matter what your politics are, it doesn't matter. Like, we're holding space for each other. There's a lot of positivity, like not necessarily safe space. We're not talking about that per se, but the whole concept of you actually have to have power in number. You have to have conversations to feel empowered and to feel like you can move forward and feel comfortable. And by sharing your story about your bipolar disorder, and then the artist bipolar disorder, you guys met on mutual ground that you would have no idea. And a lot of people have shame over everything from ailments, brain ailments, health issues, to politics. They have it across the board. And the more we talk about it, the more comfortable we can become. And I think that's incredibly important to your story. So with that said, I'm sorry for cutting you off. I just knew we had some new people. Again, please feel free to start putting questions in the box and we'll go back to this.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great you bring that up, because I had a lot of shame, actually. A lot of shame around grief, a lot of shame about depression. I come from a family that's like A-type personalities, just go. My dad has a PhD. My cousin has a PhD. My sister graduated from a really good school as well. So, you know, like this kind of like weakness that we think is, I would say, traumatized. I don't know if it's my culture as Chinese American or if it's just in general, like the culture of being in California and LA, where it's like hustle, hustle, hustle. Like it's real, there's really no space to really just be sad and be sad for a long period of time. I gave myself, at one point, I gave myself like a summer to get over it, right? Even in my head, I was like, oh, you're going to get over it. You're going to get over it. And when it didn't happen, I shocked myself. And I was like, oh, what's wrong with me? And then, so what I found to be the most healing is first to hear other people share on things that I'm too ashamed to speak about. And for me, that was a 12-step meeting, like just any kind of adult support group where people are sharing, because they're not just sharing about the substance abuse, they're sharing about like life issues, right? So a lot of times I found myself connecting with people I never thought I would have connected to outside of the meetings. I would connect with, I remember like just one guy, just, you know, like completely, he's a Mexican gangster with like a teardrop tattoo, and we became friends, and we were just started sharing on deeper issues because he was sharing things that I heard pieces of my story in there. And that's the miracle of what I now believe is in the scripture of 1 Corinthians 13:12. So I believe there's 13 verses that describe love, speaking of episode 13.
Yeah.
So it was so it's in the Holy Bible, and there's 13 verses that lay out what love is. And in 1 Corinthians 13:12, it states, "For now we see a reflection as in a mirror, and then we shall see face to face. For now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known." And when I read that, I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what healed me ultimately, was these adult community support groups that were run by, you know, everyday people, you know, and it's self-supporting. And, you know, that did more for me than any pill, any behavioral therapy group, any mental health institution, for me, and honestly, any suicide prevention hotline, which I've also used before. So for me, you know, being connected among kindred fellows was the beginning of my recovery in grief.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing inside the organization is I'm simulating that through media. And we're also now, the last 6 months, we've had like 6 journal artists host journaling sessions. So we host like Monday through Saturday every day. We're just doing these journaling sessions online. And it's a simple 3-section process. One is like we pull quote from the artist interviews, and we've actually had a few pull quote from your video. I've been hosting these sessions, and you know, people would pull something you said, and that would be their journaling prompt. Step 2 is we would journal distraction free. So we like set the clock 15 minutes. We have like suggestions on how to journal that's going to activate your subconscious. And then the last step, which is like I believe the most connective, cathartic step, is what we call resonate editing. And resonate editing is simply, you're just like, let's say you are the journal artist sharing in this group, right? The rest of us who's listening, if you're doing it on a Google Doc, all we're doing is we're highlighting parts that we can relate to. That's all we're doing. We're not commenting, we're not, you know, suggesting, we're just highlighting places we can relate to. And if you're reading it out loud, we're DMing you on the Zoom chat, like parts that we could relate to.
Right.
So the person who's sharing is getting these feedback of their journal entries that have been connected and related by kindred strangers. because whenever we go inside a journaling session, people are coming from all over the United States, you know. The silver lining of the COVID is like more people are more open to online connected ways of meeting people. So, you know, this was really an opportunity for us to connect.
Yeah.
I hope I answered Brittany's question.
Yeah, I think that I like that you called it the COVID. It's funny. It's like some people are like, you know, the COVID, like it's funny. Yeah, no, and it's what's interesting about journaling these days is it's kind of like we have different tiers of comfortability. And I think some people are like, oh, meditation too far. And then some people that probably laughed at meditation 5 years ago are like, I'm down. Journaling is comfortable for everyone. And it is at a point where, I mean, people who have seen some of our different shows, we've got Jeff Markinet, and he's got a journaling book. We're actually going to have another guest on Changemakers, I think, next week, that also has a book coming out about journaling. The healing nature of journaling is amazing. It gets your thoughts out. It gets your emotions out on a piece of paper, and it allows... There's no rules. That's the great part. Like you can journal about the moment. You could journal about future things. You could journal about love. You can journal about anything. And the power behind that is really amazing because it gives you a place of emoting. It's almost like breathing in the bad or breathing in the good, exhaling the bad type situation, which you can't do with the mask on. Different story for a different day. But one of the things I found very interesting about our conversation, I talked to a lot of people. I'm on a lot of different podcasts. And when we did our pre-thing, one of the most important things you said to me, and I think I talked about it even on your show, is it's funny that I ask this of people all the time, and nobody really asks it of me, but you asked me what my why was. And in the world of business, in the world of entrepreneurship, that's the most common thing. Like you had Simon Sinek, you talk about your why. Like that's how you sell yourself. That's how you do everything. And I've never been asked it, and you asked it to me, and I had realized in that moment, because I mean, a lot of the people now might be newer, but we did have a gentleman that passed away actually like the day I think you and I talked, Dr. Frank, who'd been on some of our shows, and I realized the effect that I had on him and that we have as a group with Be the Change and some of the messages that I've received, and knowing the impact on the community, and you can have that same impact with the books that come out and the way you explain things and the journaling. We are constantly creating ripple effects. There's a lot of people doing it, and it's great to be a part of something like that and to realize that the effect we have on people, and we don't know if they're going to die tomorrow, if they're going to live to 90 years old, and they're going to help change other people's lives. We're constantly trying to improve the people around us. So yeah, so I when you said that to me, I never truly thought about it. And it's still something that I probably will tell you I think about almost every day. So that was very, therapeutic and great that you even brought that up. And I think it is part of your comfortability with journaling and your comfortability with talking about emotions, which we don't talk about enough, especially men. But I mean, it's something that's growing, and it's something it's become something of our daily lives now. And I think it's fantastic. And I love that you are pushing that more and more out there. Do you have any, and people that are in the comments, please feel free to ask any more questions, anything about the stuff that she does. You can find Mingjie on thelovestory.org. And how would people sign up to be a part of the journaling?
Oh, yeah. Just go directly on thelovestory.org. Right when you get on, you'll see a way to sign up for a journaling session. There's many options out there. Journal alone, journal together, journal by pain, journal by passion. So you could just go and just get started on your own. And I like what you said, Anthony, about like how important is it, like your big why, right? Like why do what you do, why live? And I think part of the reason why I almost lost hope was because when I lost the love of my life back 9 years ago, I thought I lost my why. And when I thought I lost my why, it was very hard to justify my existence. And I know it sounds a little like gothic romantic or whatnot, but for me, it was real, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, vision makers, game changers out there discover their why by first going through the painful process of discovering what is the problem.
Right.
And for me, I had to go through that really painful process of like, what is the problem with me? Like, and I had to go within and really dig deep. In fact, like, so how I discovered my why was through first understanding what is the issue that I'm personally dealing with. If you see on this shelf right here, there's like a naked picture of me, but it's in honor of naked Adam. And I have a line that says, I hid from you because I am naked. And it's supposed to be, I hid from you, quote, God, because I am naked. But I left God out because this, for me, is a matter of like relating to everyday people of why we hide, right? And yes, God is still in the presence of it. But in a way, I feel like when you're in that dark night of the soul, you feel as though nobody's there. And you feel the real absence of God, even though in my faith, God is always there regardless. But when I was in it, I felt as if God was a sadist and just like someone out there to make me suffer, right? I was really angry. And I think, so part of our community, we journal in fiction based on a true story. Our Fight Club rule is you don't disclose what parts are nonfiction, what parts are fiction. So this whole book is actually listed in the genre of fiction, literary fiction. So it's a collection of journal entries I've written in the first, second, third person writing voice. And it really just focuses on like why was I so angry? They say that depression is anger turned inwards. And I was a stuffer. I was an emotional stuffer, and I was I stuffed my pain through alcohol and food. And to a certain extent, like just traveling in a way, right? So for me, I had to really sit still and really journal through it. And in 2019, I actually self-quarantined. Even though I was flying everywhere, it was just me and my dog Foxy. And we went to we spent 9 months in Europe. And it was just me and my dog. And that's how I was able to get all the journaling through. Not that I recommend people to just start, going off somewhere and start journaling. But you know what? Since we're in the quarantine anyway, why the hell not, right? Like,
you live in California, don't you?
Yeah.
You're in lockdown. I'm in Texas. I literally am telling you, I was in a small town part of Texas last week, and legit, you still go to grocery stores and people aren't wearing masks. I was like, I could get used to this. It was interesting. I was like, it was almost like nothing was different. But like California, you guys are literally like chained and shackled out there right now.
Yeah. So for all the California people, I'm saying this is a great time to journal. You really want to get deep into, like where you're at, like, see if you could find the silver lining in your suffering. I really think that is the main crux of our program is like, how do you find the silver lining in your suffering? So going back, my what was low self-esteem. It really came down to that. It really came down to like, after journaling through it, I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to love myself. And I put all my value and worth on someone else. So when that person left, it was like they left with all my values. And that was crazy. So that's why it's called Diary of a Crazy Entrepreneur.
We'll get back to that question. Go ahead and finish. All right. But I want to go back to that one, but go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, I knew that my problem was I had low self-worth. So how do I get it? So I really had to go through my spiritual journey and walk. And for me, it came to a loving God. My solution was to find a loving God who loved me when I couldn't love myself. My solution was a higher power that could infill me and indwell me through the Holy Spirit and help me see the silver lining. I learned how to pray. I learned I'm still learning how to meditate. Not there yet. It's ironic. I know I'm Chinese. I should be able to do that first. But apparently I like to talk to God more than I like to listen to God or to anyone else. But anyway, you know, so it's like, you know, how do I love myself? And so for me, it came down to a loving God. And that inspired me to write the Producer's Playbook, which is the other book you see in the middle, the top middle I'm pointing at. Yeah. And that's basically the foundational textbook to our bread and butter flagship program right now called the Producer's Playbook program. It's basically how to transform your tragedy in 3 acts. Act 1 is about acting in faith while facing fear. Act 2 is about acting in compassion while facing the numbness of apathy. Act 3 is about acting in grace while facing the wrath and anger of judgment. Whose judgment? Your judgment, God's judgment, other people's judgment, just the idea of like, you know, judgment. Yeah. And so really it's like God's judgment, God's grace. Your judgment, your grace. Other people's judgment, other people's grace. There's always a duality in my mind, always a duality in life, you know. And I know there's a different philosophy out there, and I've been submerged in that philosophy, which is like, oh, you create your own reality. However, what had me break out of that paradigm and into the paradigm of duality, right and wrong, yin and yang, light and dark, good and evil, is really for me a self-reflective journey of what I've done that was wrong, what other people have done that I considered evil, like gaslighting, evil, right? Like manipulation, evil. So, I mean, in my mind, right? Like
telling people they're gaslighting when they're not really gaslighting, evil. Right, Sometimes it's just called changing the subject. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, they're just confused. I don't know. Like, who knows nowadays? But anyway, so yeah, so I realized that, okay, well, we all have shadows, right? And so now I got into Carl Jung's work on shadow work. Like, what is shadow? And to put it simply, shadow is the absence of love. According to our organization's definition, a shadow is the absence of love. There's love and there's the absence of love, right? There's ones and there's zeros. Like if you look at it from a coding perspective, like the presence of love, the absence of love, 1, 0. And yeah, people are like, oh, that's a little absolutist. I get that, but at the same time, I also believe that you either did it or you didn't do it, right? You either love someone or you don't. Like you either, you know, and it fluctuates. It doesn't mean like, you know, you're an absolute good person or an absolute bad person. I think because I'm gonna get a little like into the matrix of things, like how in the Matrix they have the 1 0s mapped out on the computer screens, and even in coding there's 1 0s. And when you're looking at like I think quantum physics, like polarities, 1s and 0s. I think it's a constant battle. It's a struggle. It's a spiritual war, I think, and it's a war within. It really is. Like moments where you're tormented inside. Why are you tormented? You're figuring out something. Your spiritual force is at work. You're deciding on something. You're contemplating something. You're battling good and bad voices in your head. So I feel like our greatest war is the war within. Our greatest fight is choosing love, and I think our greatest purpose is to love, right? And so I believe shadows have a very important function in revealing the depth of love. So let me expand on that. If you think about a stage theater, right? And you think about the way the lighting goes, if it's just a focused light.
Spotlight.
Spotlight placed on an individual and they're having a monologue, right? It heightens, it focuses in, and it creates intensity. It creates depth. And so I really believe that the presence of shadows is designed to reveal the depth of love. And I believe there's an algorithm out there, like what is more powerful, the power of love or the love of power? And you can look at it metaphorically, like, you know, God and Satan having a conversation on like, what is love? Is love really good? Right? So the concept of free will is actually the most powerful and the most vulnerable property of love is free will, because free will is the ability to choose the absence of love. And because we have a choice in love, the presence of the shadow is also the presence of love, third property, which is free will to choose love.
You have a very interesting way of breaking things down. I dig it. I really, really like it. The interesting thing about God and Satan, one of my favorite songs is, gosh, I think it's Mitt. Wait, what's the name? Not the politician, but it's like his name is like something Mitt Romney or something. Rit Romney. It's called. What is it called? I know the name of the song is "The Book Didn't Sell," and there's a point where God and the devil are having a conversation at the dinner table, and I'm Christian, but it's a very fascinating song because it's kind of talking about, we think that the God and the devil are so different, and they're really not. They're very, very close. So the light and the shadows are incredibly close, and it's ultimately free will is a gift from God, and we kind of lose that thought process where we rely maybe too much on God when we realize he's always there, but we still have free will. We still have to act as human beings and all that. So I'll send you, it's Rit Momney, I think it is. It's like switching the names, Rit Momney, but it's just The Book Doesn't Sell. You will like the end conversation that happens. It's pretty cool. I want to answer Robert's question because I think it plays into kind of what you said about going through the shadows. Robert, where'd it go? Robert is an avid listener of the show. How do I keep from getting depressed from all the hate in the world coming from a person filled with compassion as myself? What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would actually say, instead of fighting depression, I would ask you to consider embracing depression as a beginning of something transformational. So what I'm saying is this, have you heard of the hero's journey?
I haven't.
So the hero's journey is based on, come on now, Joseph Campbell's work on A Hero with 1,000 Faces. He basically studied all films, all epic films, and saw the commonalities from Forrest Gump to the Odyssey, right? He realized that there's a pattern. First is the hero starts in the ordinary world. Then something happens. There's a call to adventure. He ignores it. He puts it off. The pain gets more deep. Like the call starts like banging on his doorstep. He gets to a point where it's like the pain of staying in the ordinary world is now exceeding the pain of going into the world of the unknown. So now the hero crosses over into the extraordinary world, and that's leaning into the unknown, right? Yeah. So now he goes through this adventure. He meets guides, he meets enemies, but he has supernatural aid. And he finally gets to the point, goes through the dark forest, enters the dragon's lair. You know, that's like the big dark night of the soul moment where he's like hand-to-hand combat with the dragon, slays the dragon, finds the elixir, and brings the elixir back to the ordinary world. That, I believe, is every person's real journey in life. We all come, and if you could visualize like a yin yang, like I could explain it in terms of like, in the yang world, we all start tabula rasa, right? We all start from, imagine like a white tadpole with like a black dot, right? So that's the world of the yang. We all start from the tail end. We start tabula rasa. And as we start growing in our childhood, we start realizing, oh my gosh, there's a shadow that exists. Whatever that shadow manifests as, the first time you got bullied, the first time someone told you that you weren't good enough, the first time, dad broke mom's heart and you witnessed it, right? Like those are the awareness of the shadow. And then you experience fear. So we all have that experience of the awareness of the shadow. That shadow is also known as the call to adventure in the hero's monomyth. And the reason I bring this up is to address Robert's question, how do I keep from getting depressed from all the hate in the world? I'm actually going to invite you to see depression not as something to be wrong, but actually as a call to adventure. Whatever the thing that's causing you to be sad about, that's the gateway into the dark forest that you must trek, that you must go through to experience, eventually find the elixir, the solution to the problem that's been personally upsetting you, that's been personally presented to you. The problem is presented to you. Like for me, the problem was presented to me in the form of a pill. The pill that I was given, that I trusted the people with the MDs with, made me more crazy, period. It just made me more crazy. And it caused more disability than ability. So for me, the problem I needed to solve after getting rashes from the pills and almost overdosing on it was to find a better solution, right? And so for you, Robert, that depression, I wouldn't even call it a depression. I would call depression a suppressed expression. What is it that you're seeing, the nuanced things in your life that you're seeing that you're not articulating out loud? So this is the power of journaling. This is the power of writing a letter to yourself. This is the power of just expressing what you've suppressed. You could do it in fiction if it makes you feel more creative or safe or whatever. For me, I had to do it in fiction because there's just so much, like, for me, there's still a social structure in my life where I just can't out my closest loved ones, So I put it all in fiction. Now, what I'm saying is, like, what is it in you that you witnessed personally that has caused depression? And I want you to consider leaning into it through your creative expression. And from that, I would challenge you to consider that this is your call to adventure.
So knowing Robert a little bit based on some of our conversations, first off, I should have gone first because yours was much more expansive and more interesting. But Robert struggles with a lot of what people on our page are struggling with right now. And I know the political aspects, and him and I have talked about it. And honestly, when you say adventure and follow the whole, but like turn it into an adventure, I want to personally tell you, Robert, that you're one of the people that, and I love the group that has become part of Streetlights and Be the Change, but a lot of them push us, and you need to be pushed. You need to be motivated. Like, we want this, we want more. And that's not a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. But Robert always was one telling me that I looked tired, and he was telling me to rest. And sometimes you were always a voice for complete positivity. You are the new Frank, Dr. Frank. You are the person that keeps me balanced, and I have made life changes in the last couple weeks based on some of the stuff that you specifically have told me. So you should know that, and you're helping me because honestly, I was starting to get the same issues that you're getting depressed by. I was in that as well. I told Mingjie this before, like, I never dealt with depression. I never dealt with anxiety or any of these things until this year. And it's not as severe as I know people have had to deal with, but it's different. And that same thing, you're getting that spiral, doing what you do, just knowing and knowing that I'm helping people and knowing that you are helping me. And we're all a part of this gigantic organism. You traveled down that road, and you traveled down the road of adventure by engaging with me. And unfortunately, not everybody engages with Cash Rise. Sometimes it gets through the slips, and we build a this weird 2020 friendship. So you've done it. You've started it, and know that. And part of the things that you've told me is to take a step back and honestly just watch our stuff, the shows that Cash and I and what we put on. Start watching some of the love story stuff. Watch less. And that's one thing that you have passed on to me is I've decided to stop doing Facebook at night. I've simplified my life a little bit more than I thought I could, and you are one of the people that have helped me. So you've done it. So that's the best thing I can say. So you're living it, and be less depressed for that. And yes, Facebook is worse than a drug. Oh man. Let's see. I did have one. Somebody asked about anxiety. I feel like it's very similar to the answer you just gave. But the question I do have is, if people want to really join, like if they go to lovestory.org, is there like classes, or is it like journaling? Is it free journaling? How does that work? Do people just get to join in on the groups? How does the actual system work if they want to be a part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to answer your question and address her question. So you could go on the lovestory.org and click Journal Together, and that'll give you I would say that's the sample of the sample size. If this was Costco and they were like giving out samples, that's a sample. I want you to taste what it's like to journal with a community, and how to journal in fiction, how to journal and get activated by the artist interviews we've curated on the platform, and how to share in a fictional basis, right? And get that feeling when people resonate on yours, and when you hear other people share their journal entries in fiction. And then if you do decide, wow, this is important for me, and I want to now journal to discover my passion, my true pursuit, and my purpose, then I would invite you to join our journaling program, which is segmented: Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And each act is a year long, but we've done our pilot. So this other, there we go. These other books on the bottom are journal artists who have published their books, their journaling, their journal entries in fiction. And they basically journaled out their book of tragedy. Like, they were able to see like what their shadows were, and what was causing the suffering, and articulate it. This is something I realized: you can't move from point A to point B until you have been heard, and until you've been validated at point A. Nobody who lost a mother or brother would like to be told to just get over it, that there's going to be better days. Like, no, F off. Like, that's the first reaction you'd have. And then you'd be like, you don't understand. Like, you don't know this pain. So I think it's important to do shadow work. Carl Jung talks about shadow integration. That's like the full circle of doing shadow work. So what is shadow integration? Again, I could explain it in context to the yin yang circle. So like I said, you have the yang with the white tadpole with the black dot, but then you have the yin, which is the black tadpole with the white dot. Right? So the yin side is when you actually embrace the shadow, like exists, and you're finally coming from a place of non-judgment and compassion for shadows, for your shadow, for other people's shadows, for why we have shadows. And then you use it's kind of a Jedi mind trick. You're transforming the trick into the treat. You're becoming anti-fragile. You're acknowledging. You're becoming Gandhi. Like you're getting into that position of non-judgment and acceptance, accepting life as life is, accepting reality as reality is, and then from there, as you trek along the journey of the dark forest, you find your new center. This is what's known as New Eden, or the new hope, love after love. And for me, I was just sharing with Anthony, I recently found I would say the love of my life. We met 2 months ago, but honestly, it's such a transformative journey for me. We've been hiking and road tripping everywhere, you know, and I'm finally coming to a place of like self-love first, and then meeting my partner where he's at. And I have something to give him because my love is sourcing from within myself rather than from a place of I need you because you have something that I'm missing. And now I have the self-esteem, self-respect, self-confidence to go into this relationship with like, I have something to offer you and I'm going to respect you, you know, that kind. So that's just like a microcosm of the analogy, the metaphor of like New Eden. Now to answer the question on anxiety, I believe that anxiety is future tripping on the worst case scenario. So I get anxiety. I used to have panic attacks to a point where I thought I was dying. In college, I went to the hospital with these panic attacks. And the doctor, right when I got there, the doctor would tell me there's nothing wrong. MRI scans and everything, like nothing's wrong. And I realized that I was just, like I said, I was an emotional stuffer. Like everything's just peachy and fine, you know? And so I wasn't able to express the things that were rooted in things that I couldn't control. And I believe anxiety at the root of it is the feeling of losing control and being abandoned. And so I think what is the replacement of that fear? Faith. Faith in what? It's completely nuanced for the individual, right? So it's a replacement program. Instead of fixing the problem, create the solution. So maybe it's getting present. So if future tripping, the worst case scenario, is causing the anxiety, then maybe the solution is getting present, getting grounded, counting to 10 and looking at where your feet is planted, getting into the now, the present. The present perfect moment is always provided for. You're always provided for in the present perfect moment. The provisions that are given to you by HP, higher power, is always given to you in the present perfect moment.
What she said. All right. I've got two more. I know we're going a little long and then we'll wrap it up. I just got two quick questions. Just based on the way you talk about psychology and the human spirit, and I know that we've talked about your, the school of hard knocks, what you've gone through and learned about yourself. What's your educational background?
I was a poli-sci major, undergrad, master's in secondary education, became a public school teacher, a middle school teacher, taught English for over 10 years. I taught private school, I taught inner city, I taught charter school, I taught public school. And I'll say, like, the whole gamut of kids that I saw, the one thing that they all had in common was they needed love. They just needed more love. And there needs to be a lot more emotional EQ, emotional quotient, like education in our communities, in our school systems. Yeah.
100%. Last question for you, and then I'll have you say some last words. Do you have any like favorite case studies of artists that you've dealt with, or something that was so transformative of anybody you've worked with, or somebody in your journaling that just absolutely excelled beyond words, that you realized that your ripple created ripples past that?
You mean like a journal artist, like someone that has taken the pilot and has gone through the journaling program, or an artist that I've interviewed?
Either. Pick it. Your choice.
Okay, I'll speak on a journal artist who is published here, somewhere here. I won't name specific names, but this individual, she had something very similar to me, which was she had a hard time speaking her voice. She like 9 years ago, I had trouble speaking up for myself. And when I first met her, I saw the older version of myself, or the younger version of myself in her. And she was constantly apologizing for everything. And every so once in a while, she'll say, correct me if I'm wrong. Like every so few sentences, correct me if I'm wrong. And I know where that's coming from. Like I didn't want to call it out or anything, but you know, so I just kept encouraging her to journal, to speak out, to like say, and her written word is so amazing. Like the way she writes is so strong, it's so powerful. It's like, you know, Maya Angelou, you know, it's like, it's just powerful. And like, so her presence in, you know, person to person, you know, is timid and meek, but like her writing voice is strong and powerful. So I saw the contrast, and I think over time, she was better able to assert herself. I think over time, through the journaling program, she was able to begin the process of matching her writing voice with her speaking voice. And that's really key for me as well. We call it going from broken to becoming broken open. You know, so it's like the concept, like, you know, like speak your truth, even if it's in fiction, speak it. And I got that inspiration from James Joyce. He wrote a semi-autobiographical novel called A Portrait of a Young Man as an Artist. And it was basically his story, his childhood, but he presented it completely novelized in fiction. And so ultimately, we want to avoid, you know, pointing fingers, slandering, casting blame or shame. So how we do it is we do it in fiction. How we speak our truth for connection and catharsis is in fiction. Because ultimately, who cares what last week's news is? But I can still remember the story of A Portrait of Dorian Gray, you know, Oscar Wilde, his story, right? So you can remember stories. You could derive the lessons. Tortoise and the Hare, you know, Little Red Riding Hood, George Orwell, 1984.
You mean America 2020? No.
Animal Farm, you know, like you can remember these stories and derive its lessons. And so it really isn't about like who's wrong, who's right, but like, can you articulate the story of your time? Can you articulate your life story in fiction for the ages to come? 200 years from now, can they read your story just like I've read Anne Frank's diary and be able to derive the humanity in you?
The original journal. That is the original journal right there. The OJ.
Yeah. I love that.
This has been fun. You are so it's funny each week. I'm like, God, I love this. This was good. I truly wish there's more people that watch this show. I know a lot of our people follow the politics and we follow the different stuff, but each one of the 13 shows that we've done to this point have had such intricacies and different lessons and different pieces. You speak from such a place of brilliance and vulnerability as well as intelligence, and I truly enjoy it. Scott just joined. You are late, and you are literally right when we're leaving here, so you can watch the replay of it. I'm going to ask you guys to make sure you share this one. I think what's very interesting about certain episodes that we do is this one has a wide sweeping help for people, and it doesn't matter what they're going through, but it helps. And I would love people to be more a part of the love story as well, and I need to pay more attention to it. Freedom Riders is good. I think I just watched that recently. It's pretty good. But yeah, Mingjie, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing space with us. If somebody would have told me I would say those words 5 years ago, I would have smacked them. But honestly, last words for anybody. Anything you can give them, a little bit of journaling, love, world advice, peace advice, change advice. What do you got?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2013, I almost took my life, and I was really bitter and angry at God. I was like, God, what the F is the point of existing? You know, you design us to love only to get us experience the suffering of loss. I was angry at him. And then a few moments later, you know, the cops came just in time. They gurneyed me into the ambulance, and it was like a quick download from God. And I got it. I got it. He gave me the answer. It's like, I am here to love, and I am surrounded by love. And my mission, my whole purpose of existence is to embrace love. And what I would invite every single person out there to consider is that you are a walking love story. That God's will for you is to transform loss into a love story. That God's will for you is the redemption story, is the character arc or the story arc or the Ark of the Covenant or the Noah's Ark, whatever you reference you want to think about. The rainbow, right? Get to the pot of gold. I really believe that God is love and love is the answer. And I do believe that God's will for all of us is to return home to source, to pure love.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to end. I'm going to go ahead and let it be on that. That's great. And thank you for sharing that. When it comes to near-death type experiences or people like, I'd like to bring up Cash, who could have potentially been killed by the police when he was younger. He's holding a gun or holding a knife and doing all these things wrong. You know, there is a world or an alternative universe, Mingjie, where you're not here, where they didn't save you. There's an alternative world where somebody like Cash, who's trying to create all this change in the world, isn't here. Near-death experience show the importance of the moments in life once you appreciate it and how you can come forward and how you could then realize that your true purpose and what you're here for, and then create change from that point. So I think that's the ultimate message for everybody to leave with is, if there's ever been something close, or if you ever get close, that realize that in that moment of redemption and when you spin back and when you are here and maybe you shouldn't be, you survive an accident, whatever it is, do something with it and create the change that is meant to be there in the world around you. So thank you, Mingjie. I appreciate it. A reminder to all of our viewers tonight that this show, that I don't want to say out loud because how many less viewers can they cut us down to anyways? Conservengers. Yeah, I said it. I did. I read it out loud. Episode number 2. It's at the end. Maybe they won't even catch it. You got to follow our YouTube page in order to get there. I know some people have been watching on YouTube. YouTube.com/C/Be the Change USA. Right? It's right there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So make sure you go there. Check that out. Subscribe there. We need to get to 1,000. So we have obviously a lot of our followers on Facebook. We're getting close to 1,000. So please help us out. Follow that page. We'll see you guys tonight at 9 o'clock Central Time, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Thank you again, Mingjie, and thelovestory.org. Figure that out. Find that out. Go to check her out and possibly grab some of the books. Cool. Love you guys. Be the change you wish to see in the world, and thank you so much for tuning in.
Oh, wait.
Live long. What's? I don't even know. How do you do the one? That was weird. I can't do it.
There we go.